Hey folks, I am pleased to tell you that the Flippening Podcast is back. It's been over a month since we published the last episode, and frankly, I didn't know if we were going to continue doing them. The Flippening Podcast, if you've ever heard an episode, for example, the security token documentary, it's something that takes a lot of time to put together, to put content together and assemble content that's produced at that level. There's a lot of scripting. There's scripting of intros and outros. There's a lot of post-production editorial work. And frankly, there's a lot that goes into it. And I don't know, honestly, like about every day or so, someone hits me up and wants to be on the podcast. And often it's these podcast PR firms that are trying to get their CEO or the CEO of a company that's hired them to be on the podcast. And I don't think they have any idea how much time I put onto this. So, someone casually shows up because they're doing a quote unquote podcast tour, and, we record them for an hour. And then after that, it's like hours of work go into getting that episode live, probably 8 hours per episode. No joke. And so, and just to actually clarify, so far, no one who's ever reached out to me to be on the Flippening Podcast has been booked, with one exception. It's all been people I reach out to and ask. So we're starting the Flippening Podcast back up again. And, like I might have said before, I didn't know if we were going to bring it back. Like, honestly, I look at the top crypto podcasts, and I would count the Flippening a couple months ago. I would put the Flippening in that category when we were releasing episodes on a regular basis. But the top crypto podcasts generally aren't run by people that are also CEOs of product companies, at least product companies in the software space versus perhaps the media space. And that's because it takes a lot of time. So in the time that's passed since we posted the last episode, a bunch of people reached out asking what had happened and basically making the case for bringing it back. And we had an internal debate about whether or not to proceed with the podcast. And after a lot of deliberation, I decided it was worth doing, but I needed some help. So we hired someone who's going to be essentially the producer for the podcast. So we have an editor, but now we have an editor and a producer, and they're going to be able to help with everything from concepting the shows to helping with distribution to concepting things. And it's really it's exciting. And I believe, if all this goes right, that it's going to require much less of my time than it did before, because because of the producer whose job it is going to to be to focus on this. And it's not a full-time position. They do other things as well. So anyway, lots of great stuff is on the way, and I think you can expect starting next week, I think you can expect that episodes will be released every week, every single week, maybe even more frequently than that if we can get our act together. And as of today, hopefully by the time you're listening to this, but if not, a few hours after we release this, the first new episode will be live, which is actually part 2 of the deep dive we were doing on decentralized exchanges. So, so I'm excited to say that we're back. I am thrilled that we've been able to make this change. I'm excited that we're actually going to be able to do this podcast justice. I feel like the podcast for a long time has been one of those things that had a high level of production, but other than the audio itself, we didn't do as much as we could do. And so almost all the growth was around word of mouth. The average episode during the bull market was around 50,000 downloads per episode, and during this bear market, it's been more around 25 to 30,000 downloads per episode. But I think we can get back to 50,000 in the bear market. We're just going to up our game. We're going to 2 or 3 or 4x what we were doing before. So thanks to everyone who offered encouragement. Thanks to sponsors who've stepped up to say that they believe that the show should exist and that they want to sponsor to make this possible. And thanks to everyone who's offered help along the way. So if you're not a subscriber to the Flippening Podcast, just search for it in whatever podcast platform you use. It's probably there, or you can just Google it and find it. And also, if you are a fan of the show and you liked it and you never got around to leaving a review on iTunes, preferably iTunes, that's a definite way that you can contribute. Anyway, I'm pleased to say it's back. We're excited to share this content with you, and we've got an awesome lineup of content coming your way. All right, take care. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening. If you liked this content, please help me out by leaving a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It provides me with encouragement and it helps other people find the program. Also, if you have a question that you'd like me to answer on the podcast, go to asknomics.com, leave me a question, and I'll do my best to answer it in the next few days. Thanks for listening, and see you tomorrow.